Welcome, guys, to the Metabolic Health Docs YouTube channel. I'm so happy you've joined me today. And today we're going to have a little fun because I have a really good friend and guest here, Dennis Pollock, who I'm going to have him introduce himself. But we're here today to talk about how do you beat diabetes? And it just made sense. This guy has a Beat Diabetes YouTube channel. Wouldn't it make sense to have him come and share his perspective? He's helped so many people over the years in this area, and I thought you should be one of them. So, Dennis, why don't you introduce yourself, my friend?
Well, yeah, as you say, my name is Dennis Pollock. I have been I've played different roles and careers over the course of my life. I have been a pastor, I have done African missions, and I kind of backed into the whole beat diabetes thing accidentally, although I believe there was a divine calling there all along, but I sure didn't know it. And I had diabetes come rushing at me when I was in my late 40s. And my mom had had diabetes, had had both of her legs amputated, had a terrible last 15 years of her life. She did make it to 80, but she sure struggled and suffered and was in and out of the hospital. And here it looked like it was coming after me. And so I did some research, did a lot of praying, did a lot of research. There wasn't any YouTube in those days, but there was good old Dr. Richard Bernstein. He had a great book. And Dr. Atkins had a book I read, and then I just started testing my blood sugar like crazy. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Awesome. And I'm glad you brought up your mom and God rest her soul. But what a great motivation. We love our moms and we want them to be here forever. So one of my favorite videos is your video that talks about the standard American diet that stole 16 years from your mom's life. One of my favorite videos. And so what I want to encourage everybody to do is to check out that video, but I have an easy way for you to get to it because when I see my patients in clinic, one of the things I do is I share a link tree that I'll have in the video notes. And one of the links is to Dennis's foundational videos for someone who wants to reverse diabetes. So there's 15 videos, and I think the one that we're talking about now is video number 5. So check that out. And then after you do that, check out the other videos, but more importantly, subscribe to his channel because Dennis, unlike myself, is only focused on primarily diabetes, where I'm kind of focused on the nest and the rope and all the other lifestyle aspects. So I just wanted to put that in front of you guys as we have this conversation. So this discussion today is about providing hope. So many people are still thinking you cannot reverse type 2 diabetes. Now, there are 34 to 36 million people in America who have type 2 diabetes, and certainly a lot who also have type 1. And at the end of the day, this insulin resistance that occurs, this out of control blood sugar that occurs with type 2 diabetes can simply be reversed. And with type 1, my wife's type 1, and she has very good control because she has a dietary plan that supports that control. So although you can't reverse type 1, I want to say that out loud, you can certainly normalize your hemoglobin A1c and have a full life. So Dennis, do me a favor, since that's where you focus, let's share some tips for our audience so we can restore hope and give people a path to reversing type 2 diabetes.
When I first got attacked with diabetes and my blood sugar was jumping all over the place, it was actually going both directions. It would go way too high and then it would drop way too low, which was a pretty scary thing. In those early days, I didn't know what a carbohydrate was. I didn't know how it related to diabetes at all. I was just as ignorant as you could possibly be. Even though my mom had been diabetic, I really hadn't learned much from her experience. And so here it was coming at me. And what really changed the direction of my life and was the means by which God blessed me with some insight was I had a secretary whose husband was a severe diabetic, and she recognized some of the things going on with me sounded a lot like either diabetes or something closely related. So she brought me a glucometer, a glucose meter, and taught me how to use it. I was scared of it. The first few times I tried it, it just, I couldn't hardly get a number. I couldn't get the blood to come out of my finger. But eventually I learned it well. And I guess I've taken, I don't know, maybe a couple of thousand glucose readings since then. But one of the first things I noticed, Tony, was that when I ate meals that had a lot of carbohydrates, and I'm talking, and I don't just mean sugar. Sugar is definitely a carbohydrate, but there's a lot of other carbohydrates. So I'm talking about potatoes and bread and chips and pretzels and bagels, things that aren't even sweet. Would do this, but I noticed that when I ate a meal that had a lot of carbohydrates, my blood sugar jumped up.
Hmm.
And it almost became kind of like a game to me to keep those numbers down. I mean, it was a game where my life was on the line. But I found out, for example, that when I would eat a garden salad, my numbers barely moved.
Hmm.
But if I would eat something with a lot of carbs, they'd go way up there. I'd get a 200, a 190, a 220. And that was depressing. So that provided not only information, suddenly I became an expert, not on diabetes really, but on my own body and how I responded to foods. And, but it also gave me, beside just the knowledge, it gave me the motivation. Man, I had motivation. Of course, part of it was the fact that when I would have these low blood sugar episodes, I would be near fainting. And one time I did, in fact, faint. And when they tested me, the glucose meter said LO, low. So I knew I
Hmm.
was in bad shape. But I suddenly had both information, and I was on my way. So, I mean, if someone just said, give me one thing to do, I would say, you need to reduce those carbohydrates significantly. Underscore the word significantly, as
That's
like
right.
go from 250 grams of carbs per day down to maybe 30 or 20 grams of carbs per day, and just see what that does with your glucose numbers.
Yeah, and I think that number is insightful, and I know we follow some of the same people. And Dr. Eric Westman at Duke, he would say that 20 to 30 number is a good number to be. You'll probably be in ketosis, and you'll certainly not have enough uh, glucose in your blood to make diabetes a thing for type 2. So I think that's really important. But what I really love is that your meter, and nowadays we have continuous glucose meters, are very informative. Not only do they give you the feedback you need to know that the food you just ate was either good for you or bad for you, but it also changes your behavior, because once you've gotten that information, it may change the decisions you make about what you're gonna eat. So, and I'm sure you had that. So for you, was that the kind of experience you had in your life where, okay, I kind of know what's gonna hurt me, and now my behavior changes? How did that impact you?
Yeah. Well, the thing that was really an aha moment for me was when I realized that whatever foods I put in my mouth would show up on my glucose meter about an hour after I finished eating.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a tremendous sense of empowerment from that, because it's like, well, I have some control over this.
That's
A lot of
right.
times, medical conditions you don't have much control. You just go to the doctor, you get the surgery, you take the medicine, whatever it is, but there's not much you can do. But boy, with this thing, I could eat one meal and I'd jump to 220 about an hour after eating, and another meal I would be like 115. And I was like, whoa, I really can do something about this. It kind of reminds me of Dr. Richard Bernstein when he was experimenting with different foods. And he came to the conclusion, I can make my blood sugar pretty much whatever I want. And obviously, what we
Yes.
want is something fairly close to normal. And boy, I tell you, when I discovered that, I had motivation through the roof. I was just excited. And it's like, all right, let me do some more tests. Let me find out
That's
what's
right.
acceptable, what's not acceptable. And, in the world of politics, they often talk about vetting. If you're going to, bring along a VP, if you're a presidential candidate, you want to vet them and see if they've got any secrets in their closet. I was vetting my meals. I was eating
Hmm.
one meal after another. I could hardly wait to test about an hour after eating that meal and see, well, okay, what does this do? First time I ate a meal that had a banana in it, where I tested, I was shocked to find it. My blood
That's
sugar
right.
was so high. I thought, well, this was a good meal. I had salmon and I think a salad, and just that banana bumped it up.
That's
And
right.
that was the first time it dawned on me. Bananas have a lot of natural sugar. So yeah, I learned a lot and I got a lot of motivation. And That's kind of, I think, why my Beat Diabetes channel has done well. I don't have an MD after my name. I can't just tell people, well, you listen to me because I really know
That's
something.
great.
Who am I to tell anybody that I know much? But I can tell them, test yourself and see where you go from there. And you'll do the same thing I did. You'll gain information and you'll gain motivation.
Yeah, and I love the fact that until I get my wife to be in my videos because she has type 1, I am not testing my blood sugar every day, and I'm not doing this experiment that you've been doing. So that's why I refer people to your channel because you actually do the experiments. I remember one of the experiments that dealt with a banana, probably one of your most seen videos is when you compared the banana to, I think it was a Hershey's bar. Who knew that a Hershey's bar would not spike your sugar as much as a banana? It's just a shocking revelation. Both are not good, but
Right.
I think that's really important for people to hear. So you people have heard fruit is nature's candy. So now we have evidence, and that's what Dennis does. And I think I'll just say this, and everybody knows I'm about looking at the complete person. We think the biggest lever that you'll ever pull to reverse type 2 diabetes is the lever of carb reduction. Rather, you're doing low carb, keto, or carnivore. And we also want to say that there are other things out there that you need to focus on. Now, the thing I don't want you to do is to rely on gastric bypass. Having bariatric surgery is okay if you need it, if you've tried these other interventions. And guess what? Bariatric surgery will reverse type 2 diabetes, to be honest. So that's a fact. However, it's a pretty risky way to go, and there's risk. So if you need to do that and you've tried other interventions, do it. But know that that should be done only after trying the things we're talking about today. Dr. Jason Fong has taught us that intermittent fasting and fasting in general will help because you rest the pancreas. So I want to make sure people know that intermittent fasting done safely, it's nice to have a doc that can help you start to reduce medicines with any of these interventions, because when you do these things, you'll absolutely need to do that. Now, my nest talks about sleep. And if you don't get enough sleep, the S also represents stress. If you have too much stress, you're going to have a surge in cortisol, and your liver will say, I'm going to make a little glucose to help you run from your danger, but you're not running from danger. So we need to make sure we're getting adequate sleep. We're making sure we reduce stress. And guess what? If you exercise, and again, exercise is not as important as eating well. In fact, exercise may be the least important thing, in my opinion. You need to fix your diet first. But if you have more muscle because you exercise, you're going to have more places to store your glucose in the form of glycogen. And if you're exercising, you're going to burn fat. And we know that weight loss is a tremendous a tool to help you reverse diabetes. And so, but the most important thing I think Dennis has shared today is that if you have a meter, and I know you have given your meter a name, Mike the Meter, which I think is awesome. At the end of the day, if you focus on carb reduction, you or your family member can either use the language of reverse, you can use the language of remission, but what you will find is that you probably won't be on insulin. You probably won't be taking pills like metformin, and you won't have to be a human pincushion anymore because you won't have to keep checking your blood sugars anymore. So I'm really excited about the potential for that, which is why we made this video. We'll make sure to have a link to those videos I shared earlier in the link tree so you can hear Dennis's story about his mom. And I just want to wrap up with Dennis sharing anything you want to say to my audience before we wrap up the video.
Yeah. Well, I just want to encourage you. It's a scary business. Just the word diabetes by itself is scary. And to go home from a doctor's office having been told you are diabetic, in fact, you're seriously diabetic, it is scary business. The good news is there's something you can do about it. And it's like, you mentioned your wife is type 1. Well, obviously, she'll always have to take some insulin, but she has a big control over whether she has to take a lot of insulin or a smaller amount of insulin, whether she's going to just eat high carb foods and snacks and sugary stuff and then just try to make up for it with insulin, which is the exact wrong approach, or the other way around. And with type 2s, it is It's almost simple. The only thing I mean, after you get some basic information, and you could get that from watching just like 4 or 5 videos, reading 1 or 2 books. It's not hard. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. So you get the basic information. Then the only thing left is motivation. You just got to get on fire to do it. And by watching videos like Dr. Tony's, and by reading some books, and by testing your blood sugar, you will get that motivation. And Tony's right. It's not like you have to test your blood sugar like crazy all the rest of your life. If I wasn't on Beat Diabetes and doing it for the sake of others, I really wouldn't test too often, because I know by now. I mean, I've done over 20 years of glucose testing. I know what works for me and what doesn't. So it's not as bad as you might think. And God bless you, and hope it all works great for you. It should, if you'll do the right things and cut those carbs and some of the other things you'll hear on Dr. Tony's channel.
Thank you, Dennis. And as we wrap up, I'll just share that my motivation is my lovely wife. And when I learned the science around how many years of life you may lose when your blood sugar is high, I just don't want to lose those years of life. I mean, who would want to have a successful career, live the life of service, helping people get to retirement, and then you look over and your wife's on dialysis, or being amputated, or blind, or having a heart attack or a stroke, or simply not being here simply because we didn't learn this information. So if you have a family member out there who you love so much, share this video with them so that they can provide hope. Make sure they know about Dennis's channel, and give them a path to heal. And no matter what you've been told in the past, we see this happening every single day. I see it in clinic. Dennis sees it on his channel with the people who follow him. And I just want you to benefit as well. So I really appreciate Dennis coming to this video. And I thank you for coming to this video as we work as a team, collaboratively, to share the message of healing. Make sure to like, subscribe, share. And until the next video from the Metabolic Health Doc, continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest.